Hi, my name is Benjamin Reed. You may have stumbled upon this page through Preston Stewart, the New York Times, my TikTok. I'm not usually a YouTube video creator, content creator, so bear with me. I haven't set up with this. But yes, I am the guy mentioned in the New York Times regarding war crimes allegations against Chosen Company. I served alongside Kasper Grosse. I was there from October for the duration of most of the month. And prior to that, I had been to an in-processing period where I was not physically there. So my correspondences with Chosen Company are roughly from the periods of September 2023 and onwards up until this day, unfortunately. What has been said about me by Chosen Company is has just been an ongoing character assassination because I went public months before about what things that they were doing. There was a fratricide attempt on my life. Preston Stewart, somebody tried to unalive me with a knife in front of Ryan O'Leary and several others who won't speak out. However, the person to stop the guy with the knife was a guy named Dale Graham from Ireland. So he's dead now. Unfortunately, he was killed in action. Can't really talk about it. But that's not even the whole gist of what we're going to talk about. And this is a bit of an introduction of who I am and what happened. But first, let's talk about what happened with Chosen Company in Ukraine. Um, so I had been, I contacted Chosen Company through another party, and they agreed to take me on. This is my second time back to Ukraine. I had served with the Norman Brigade, and if you check on my Instagram, there's a letter of recommendation from the Norman Brigade regarding the quality of my conduct and service. That would be Benjamin underscore based on Instagram. You can read that. So let's throw that out the window. I was with the Norman Brigade. I was also with the IDLU as well, and I resigned with them. So this sort of discussion that's going on that I was kicked out of any unit is ridiculous. But yeah, so when I arrived at Chosen Company, we were promised a lot of things that never came through, and I honestly don't blame Ryan O'Leary for all of them. We arrived physically in the Avdiivka AO. I don't know exactly where it was. We had gone from uh, Dnipro all the way to an area that was just staged out somewhere in the direction around Pervomaysk or leading to it to guard the southern flank of the Avdiivka axis during the assault. I didn't know that there was going to be a massive offensive when I arrived. So the interactions I had with them and the promises that they gave me. Sorry if I go a little bit off track today. A million things have just come up. A close relative has died, so I'm a bit distracted, but we got to get this out there. Anyways, so when I got there, um, the first thing I noticed was that a lot more people had been injured on their previous operations than they were telling us and killed. That we were told that they just had one bad op and guys mostly got peppered with shrapnel. But no, there were several deaths going on. And unfortunately, even the day that I arrived, a really fantastic person named Swede, who was just about to go home the next day, had died. And that gutted me because you met the guy, and I was greeted initially um, by with hospitality by the guys at Chosen Company for the first I don't know, a couple days, maybe, I don't know. Uh, but in Ukraine, as a foreign fighter, you're more or less allowed to decline and accept missions. I'm a drone operator. I can operate FPVs, I can operate Mavics. Give me a fixed wing drone, I'll figure out how to fly it real fast because I've done a ton of flight simulators. Can't imagine it'd be too hard. I've gone to schooling for drones. I went to the Ukrainian school for drones. So I arrived there with the aspirations of being an assault team drone operator, in which Ryan uh, said that I was going to be. So that was my impression. And I had getting there, noticing that the numbers had been just, they weren't adding up on how many people were actually injured on these operations. And I had been given forewarning by many people before, like, don't go to Chosen, they're getting guys killed. This isn't as good as it looks. Trust me. But I was told by a very well-known foreign fighter in the scene that's highly respected that I'm not going to quote because he has a professional relationship with the Ukrainian military that he should and is maintaining. But I'll quote him. He said, like, you don't have to go on any op you don't want to. Give chosen company a feel before you decide to go on operations with them. I arrived there with Joel Stremski, who died on that first operation that they had, and a guy named Samberg, who's a total scumbag. We can get into that later. So when I arrived there, you know, we were told that we're going to get 2 weeks of tactical training on trench clearing and assaults because that's not what I'm specialized in. I mean, I was prepared to do assaults and clear trenches, but my primary role was that of a drone operator given my qualifications. But things changed. The offensive in Avdiivka changed everything. Ryan was given a frago. Basically, 70,000 Russians are coming towards our position. Everybody needs to man the trenches. At this point, I didn't have a contract, so I was already like, I'm not going to fight without a contract. No way. It already gave me a bad feeling. They did manage to secure contracts for the guys who went towards the last minutes, but for me at that time, it was an immediate red flag. The amount of people that had died in previous ops and the casualty rates, looking at upwards of 60%, were red flags to me, and I started to get cold feet. So when Ryan said, everybody to the trenches, I just said, I don't think this is for me. I even said to one guy, Samberg, like, man, this is kind of reactivating my PTSD from the first time I was called to do a trench defense in the year before. I admit that openly that the war has scarred and affected me. And at that point in time, I had not been at a range or shot a rifle in just over a year, and I definitely needed a warm up. So I didn't want to go out to a trench line with a rifle, unfamiliarized with unit SOPs and the AO, and be expected to defend an area I knew nothing about. My intentions were that I would be OJT'd by the drone team and sort of left to do what I needed to do, which is what happened at the Legion. And I'm thankful for the opportunity that they provided, which I wasn't kicked out of. So those guys went out on an operation. I told Ryan I think I'm gonna consider going to a different unit. I gave everybody kind of bad vibes at this point. I probably came off as a coward, but and admittedly I was scared at that point because I was like, what have I got myself into? So 19 guys went out on that mission. All but one returned back without a serious injury. The rest had very serious injuries. Joel Stremski died in a very heroic manner and managed to unalive ton of Russians. That was my close friend, and that just gutted me to pieces. It destroyed me. And he didn't come back from that mission. And I started talking to a guy named Zeus about him because Zeus was the last guy with him, and Zeus had comforted me, and I cried on that dude's shoulders, man. He's a very charming and likable guy. But what was concerning about Zeus is that everybody in the group chats and in private had alluded to what Joel or what Zeus had done, from my understanding, was on that operation. And is that during a retreat, they took several POWs and summarily executed it. And it was Zeus that did it. I heard that. Zeus alluded to it with a smile. It's not something I really thought I was going to be part of when it came to the New York Times. But again, war crimes seemed like they were systemic in Chosen Company. My second point of concern was, there's a lot of dark humor in military circles, and I get it. It's obvious. Like, it barracks humor. But we were handed gas canisters, and they weren't smoke grenades for coloring. They would have had some sort of coloring marker on them. I would have read it in Russian Cyrillic or figured it out. But I asked over and over and over again. Everyone's like, "This is war crimes gas. Don't touch it. Um, if you breathe it in, we use it on assaults, etc. Just don't breathe it in if you throw it into a bunker." I asked, like, is this CS gas? And they said no, it wasn't CS gas. Kasper saw those too. Between us and others, someone told us it was sarin gas, but I can't verify that. But from all things I was told, it was a war item that is banned in war. You know, at best, it could have been CS gas, but everyone said it wasn't CS gas. So I want to separate that. I physically picked up the canister and looked at it and then put it away because I wanted nothing to do with that. So I didn't go out on the operation, but then I felt a huge sense of guilt about what happened to Joel because I love the guy. And he, he, he ended up dying. And at this point, the intensity of the assaults were ongoing, and I knew that I really was just sitting around his dead weight. And then if I wanted to go to another unit, it would subtract from their bandwidth and resources. So I volunteered to go on operations with Chosen Company. I went on roughly 4 operations back to back with Chosen Company, which were all going to be some sort of QRF or stage to assault a position in Pervo-Mayesk. We got pulled back every time at the last minute, but we were in a tree line a couple kilometers, I don't know, away from what would be Pervo-Mayesk, a place I know was never physically was in. And I went on those ops. I didn't complain. I sat and waited there. Couldn't use my drone. Nobody had encrypted it and done all the necessary things. I felt very useless, but I went out on those QRF missions and I didn't complain. I didn't like talking to the guys in Chosen because they had a very twisted and weird sense of humor, and the discussions that they had about killing over and over again was not reflective of my character. There was extensive discussions about war crimes. Had I been the type of dude that wanted to get up in this mix about their war crimes allegations on a serious publication, I would have taken the effort to screenshot everything, but I deleted things and I moved on from my life. And if you can see my content, it's largely about travel and it's shorts. So that was never my intention. But going back to the points, I was there. I went on operations. I slept in the bunkers. I didn't see any combat. Obviously maybe 500 plus meters off. Some indirect fire might have landed somewhere, and that was pretty much the extent of it. Maybe saw some ADA go off. It was nothing like the first time when I went, or the second time, or the second part when I was with the Legion before the Norman Brigade. After a while, I just kind of understood that the likelihood of me coming out of this alive is not high. I had hurt my knee getting out of a Humvee, and I just realized I wasn't helping anyone, and I really didn't see eye to eye with anyone. I wasn't being confrontational whatsoever. And finally, a guy named Samberg, Kalen Lewis, decided to pick on me. Now, in a normal world, if you're gonna pick on a guy, say like imagine you saw a guy in a bar and you're like, all right, I want to fuck with this dude, right? Is this the guy you picked to do the fighting with? No. So obviously, as a person, I hate bullies, and I don't get bullied normally, but they have guns now, so they felt empowered. So the guy continued to bully me over and over and over again, and it would just it. He, he said I complained all the time when I was not on operations with him. He went on one operation in the beginning, the one that I declined, and he came back as that one guy that wasn't injured. Everyone else received injuries. Me and him were friends from the beginning. We actually met in Chernobyl and in processing. We had drinks together. We went out together. We hung out together. I noticed he was a little bit of a creep the way he kind of approached girls in the park and just sat down at the bench and demanded their numbers, especially for a guy that's married and at the time his wife was pregnant, was unflattering, but shove it aside. There's bigger problems you can have in a foreign fighting outfit, trust me. You got people like Craig Lang and stuff like that to deal with. But yeah, so like towards the end of my time there, me and Samberg started to have more and more tension to the point where we got pretty nasty, and it was over really nothing. It was about the placement of where we were putting our gear. And finally, he's like, nobody likes you here. Everyone wants you to leave. And so then I messaged my team leader, Dave, who was in that famous video. Go ask him to pull up the screenshots. I don't give a shit about that stuff anymore. Um, that I said I think it's best for me to move on. Samberg made the rumor that I told everyone I wanted to beat people in their sleep. No, I said, if you fuck with me, I'll put you to sleep. Rear naked choke. I will put you to sleep. I know something about that. But nah, he told everybody I was gonna beat them in their sleep. He's a master manipulator. He's good with words. He has a degree of charm about him. I liked him in the beginning. And I still to this day don't understand why he turned on me because I never did a single bad thing to him in his life for him to start with me. He thrives off power dynamics. So, it had been decided by me, O'Leary, and Dave that I was going to leave Chosen Company, and I was I was happy about that. I was going to go to another unit, even though I shouldn't have because I was clearly injured. And Samberg woke me up as I was waking up, groggy, and accused me of theft of an EO tech. Now, if you look on my Instagram, there's a photo of me with that EOTech, and there's photos of me on other pages with that EOTech. It was my EOTech. Me and Stremsky had a back and forth relationship that was very close to the point where we freely exchanged money. That it was the type of relationship where you go to a restaurant and you order for the other friend because you know what they like and you pay it, and the other guy does the same thing for you. We were bros. So I said to him, like, hey man, until you can get your own EOTech, take mine for the time being. Um, and when the time for the assault happens, I he sent me $600 US to my bank account without even telling me why. Um, Simply because he cared for me and he wanted me to go on and better myself at my next unit and that or whatever I was doing in life. He was a very really good person. And so Samberg confronted me about stealing an EOTech, which is absurd. I live a pretty comfortable lifestyle. Out there is the Mediterranean Sea. I don't need to steal an EOTech. You know, maybe if you would accuse me of stealing a drone. No, I never stole a drone. I actually donated that EOTech after I received it back to the Ukraine Armed Forces, and it's currently in the possession of a fighter out on the front. Hopefully, still hasn't been blown up or anything like that. I donated one of my drones as well to after leaving Chosen Company. I had no intention. I would have never had any intention of stealing. So waking up pissed off, trying to get Samberg riled up, trying to get under his skin because imagine he just dug into my heart with what he said. I said to him, "Look, man, I'm going to tell your wife you're cheating. You cheated on her in Chernobyl." She's like, "She'll never believe you." And I was like, I said, "I'll deep fake the conversation, you asshole." He screenshotted that. So now there's a whole bunch of lists of screenshots that he has, and by all means, release it. Where I said some ridiculous things to get him uh, animated, to say the least. I confronted him, and the fight was broken up by a guy named Graham, who's dead, and Ollie. And then I went to the chow hall to cool off. And no punches were exchanged or anything. I just went to the chow hall. I turned in my weapon to cast, so I was unarmed. I was sitting there getting my food when a guy named Greg Stenway, if I'm not mistaken, I'd have to go through everything. We'll touch this up, but I'm getting this out now just so we talk. He came in with a knife. Like, imagine a dude like walking in through a door with a knife out like this. You fucking cunt! I'm gonna kill you! Talking about Piper's family! And started running at me. In the law in the law enforcement world, the 21-foot rule would have applied. In the self-defense world, it would have. I would have pulled out a firearm and shot him on spot, but I didn't have a firearm. Luckily, he was tackled by Dale and a couple others who pulled him off me. In a normal military system, these people are then stripped of their weapons, put in confinement, sent to an MP station, and processed. And it's a court case. But Ryan O'Leary failed to act on that. He did nothing. He let him stay for the duration of time and let him resign when he wanted to. When he was instigated by Samberg, a guy who has a litany of DV charges against him in Australia, one of which was against a 6-month-old baby. Yeah, there's a survivors group in Australia talking about with women who have had a DV history with Samberg. He is a career abuser. So I honestly don't really blame Gigi because he had been hit by artillery a couple weeks earlier and his brain wasn't functioning properly. So I don't have a huge degree of animosity towards what he did. Ryan, on the other hand, didn't do anything to rectify the situation. I had to plead with the Ukrainians to bring me to a new safe house because I feared retribution. And Samberg still wanted to pick a fight with me. So I resigned from Chosen Company on my own terms. I was not kicked out. You could say I was bullied out. That's an accurate term. But kicked out? No, I wasn't. I left Chosen Company on my own terms and was invited to other units afterwards. There was no disgrace in my resignation. It was disgraceful how they handled it. This, I wouldn't even be here talking about this. Maybe I'd be dead in a Divka, but I wouldn't be here talking about this had they handled that properly. Um, the the clerk, uh, female of the 59th separate motorized brigade, informed the SBU of what happened. She was a good faith actor. I ended up giving the SBU a full testimony of what happened. They said they would investigate. They never investigated. Later on, I incurred some medical issues and was declared unfit for fighting. And I continued to make TikToks, but the guys have chosen decided it was a sport there to harass me endlessly. And it just went on and on and on and on. Threats and threats and threats. They wouldn't leave me alone. I had private lock socials and they would follow it. All sorts of bullshit that it would, I could, anything I tried to do to get them to stop it, whether it was pleading with O'Leary or trying to reason with these people. I'd gone to the SBU. Someone tried to murder me. I went to the SBU and nobody did anything. It finally, I left for Poland and I was like, look, I'm going to take my own little vendetta here. I posted a picture of Samberg in a very unflattering pose on a Telegram page that is pro-Russian but not Russians. I think it's run by some third party, but a lot of the foreign fighters read it. It's track and Nazi merc, and yeah, I just posted it in there to embarrass them because I knew that they would have a field day. They mock foreign fighters, which then got people saying that I was talking to the Russians. So I was like, all right, if you really think I'm talking to the Russians, very difficult tattoo to go to try and line yourself with Russia afterwards. But no, I said something rather regrettable after because the intensity of character assassinations just went on and on and on. And it finally culminated to me one night, regrettably, saying to O'Leary, I want you guys to write letters of apology um, for how you treated me. I didn't exactly word it that way, and then I said, we're all going to go to the Russian consulate in Serbia. That was meant to piss them off. That was nothing, had nothing to do with my hatred of Ukraine or anything like that. And besides, what information would I have to provide them anyways? I didn't actually see where they had actual fighting positions. Um, and yes, I was at their headquarters, which is a giant building, not that far from the line of contact. You know, generally speaking, in the size of Ukraine, probably, I don't know, 5, 10 kilometers back, 20 maybe. I don't know. I don't know. So I didn't really have any information. But if I did, I'm pretty sure the Russians with their extensive drone and satellite fleet could figure out a building that they built during the Soviet Union that had military buildings, military vehicles parked in front of it. Not too hard of a stretch to to think that they already knew where we were anyways. So even if I had damaging information, which wasn't my intent to release it, I didn't have that damaging information. What I mean to say is I didn't have damaging information, even if I had to an intent to leave it. Sorry, this has been a hectic day. My uncle died, so I'm dealing with an issue back home. I'm a bit distracted, but I want to get this out there. And that whole incident resulted in my hotel getting raided by the FBI, where I was cleared of any wrongdoing and just told to chill out on social media. And then I was deplatformed and yeah, I was deplatformed on TikTok and on Twitter X as well. Not that I care about that one, but I had a monetized account. Wasn't doing fantastic, but I at least started the process of trying to get some money, I was in the process of building a decent social media following. So now here we are on YouTube. Preston, you offered me an interview and then you interviewed Ryan O'Leary after. I can't say how much I admire you, and I really hope that you intend to interview me because if you said you're going to interview me, I went around and I literally sought out a place with appropriate lighting and took time out of my day to my, you know, set up my room. I wanted to make this look professional because I'm finally being. This chair just broke. Okay. Anyways, bloopers. Uh, yeah, amateur. I'm not even gonna edit that out. Let's just leave it in there. Uh, um, yeah, I really admire Preston. So this chair actually feels like it's about like the leg is coming out. I really admire Preston, and I was excited to talk to him because I admire what he does, and I thought that I was gonna have an opportunity to share my experiences because now I'm in the New York Times and a bunch of Ukrainians labeling us traitors. Sarah Aston Cirillo or whatever her name is, um, she's going on that I've somehow corroborated with the gray zone, which is just absurd again. Um, so now let's go back, if you're still listening to this, like how my history in Ukraine started. Um, I used to have a Ukrainian girlfriend named Margarita, and uh, we lived together for 3 years. I was in and out in Kiev often. I traveled to Ukraine before. I can speak fluent Russian. Можно говорить с тобой на русском языке. Если я не говорю на русском языке сейчас, скажите меня, пожалуйста. I can speak a little bit of Surgic too as well. Можно говорить по-суржик. Yeah. In my Ukrainian, I'm working on it. If I ever get allowed back in that country again, which I doubt it. So I was, was in love with this girl, and once the war kicked off, the breakup happens, and I wanted to go to Ukraine and help because I had become connected with a girl I loved, and at that time still loved, and I wanted to help Ukraine. I had been super interested in the place geopolitically for a long time. I actually had traveled there. I've gone to school for IR and learned languages and all this stuff, so I understood the importance of the event to go to Ukraine and try to help. All right, bit of an interruption there again. Yeah, so I wanted to go to Ukraine and help. Um, I first traveled to the border of Moldova and handed out some supplies to refugees, what I could out of pocket, and some of my friends had come up with a little bit of money. It amounted to food and basic things, and I also made these very primitive uh, first aid kits for Ukrainian soldiers who were then entrenched in, Mariupol fighting, and got sent in that direction. I don't know how they weren't the modern IFACs, but it was the best we could do at the time because the war had just kicked off. And even one of them I took was like one of the tourniquets that I made actually was like I think I took like an Allen wrench and I made like a loop around it. So obviously you just turn it, function like a tourniquet, right? Will do the same exact job as any other tourniquet, just primitive. So I did that and I realized like, oh man, this is not really a way to help Ukraine on a large or impactful way. So then I met up with another group through a Facebook group called British Expeditionary Aid and Rescue. But it was through another person, a girl named Nina, who was a crazy cutter. Like she had cuts all over, scars all over her wrists. I'm not trying to say bad things about mental health, but she was a 21-year-old girl who knew nothing about Ukraine, who admirably went there to help. But you can imagine, as a 35-year-old guy at the time, dealing with her was a bit tough. But we got to Ukraine, we got the aid. I said, I'm going to go look for other opportunities. I then decided it was best for me to get my own car somehow to do this and you know, to work in Ukraine. So I went to Italy to try to find a car and help my friend was going to help me registered. That failed. So then I went to Romania and I went back into Ukraine again. This is now late April, May time frame, like early May time frame, early May at this time. Yeah, no, late April. It's hard to track, anyways. Um, and I volunteered with a group called Operation Kavel, which later got disbanded. I guess there was some funky financial stuff going on there, but I was teaching Azov Kiev and a bunch of other TDF units, TCCC or CLS as it's known in the US. I was I went to school for to be an EMT for 6 months, so um, and I had training in the army. I felt was more than competent enough to teach a bunch of civilians how to apply tourniquets and so on. I did that for a couple weeks. I started looking for units in the process what they call unit shopping. So you can pick who you serve with sometimes, but who do you go with? How do you figure out who's got their shit together and who doesn't have their shit together? That is something I never mastered, obviously, or I wouldn't be here. So the first group I went with was with Norman Brigades. That was led by a Quebecois guy named Herolf, who had served in the French Foreign Legion, apparently, and the Canadian Armed Forces. And we were told it was a light infantry anti-tank reconnaissance group attached to the UDA, Ukrainian Volunteer Army, which used to be a part of Pravi sector before they split off. I just want to say outrightly, if you Google UDA, I didn't see any political stuff going on there whatsoever. So that question to me is not relevant. It's labeled as an ultra nationalist group. This is their emblem, but everyone there was just a normal person trying to defend their country at this point. And we can get into it later about the whole Azov and all that stuff and how bogus these Nazi allegations are. But yeah, moving on. So I arrived to the Norman Brigade. A brigade is usually at least 1,000 plus strong. No, but it was 8 guys in a jeep. Um, Harolf is now dead. Josh was another member. He's dead. Um, TJ is still serving. Uh, there's a guy named Edgar, a couple others, a guy named Mike. Yeah, 8 guys in a Jeep. Our first mission that we did was to recover a BMP that had been damaged by the zero line and bring it back, and we did that. The next set of missions were trench defense missions. Crazy. The wildest night of my life because I was so goddamn unprepared is when Harolf was like, "We're going to the trenches now. There's going to be an assault." And I had no idea what was going on. And if you guys want to hear more about that whole night where we got gratted, shelled, and yeah, that's a whole nother story about that that combat situation. I'm here mostly to just briefly summarize what I've done. So yeah, so after 3 weeks in the Norman Brigade, which was an unpaid volunteer unit and explicitly no contract at that time, me and the rest of the guys decided to leave. That the other guys had financial issues; they wanted to get paid, and I wanted to hang around the guys that I had served with because they wanted me to go get a drone and bring it back to the next unit. So I went to Poland, got a drone, went through drone training at Red Wings near Krakow, where the guy was a former Predator drone or Reaper drone pilot for the Polish Armed Forces, but he moved on to hobbyist civilian drones. So I got like a crash course. I got all my stuff, got thousands of dollars worth of gear, which I later on donated. And I headed to 1st Battalion Bravo Company of the International Legion. My commander was a guy named Jan. Uh, in my immediate house and squad, TJ was a squad leader. Excellent, excellent guy. I hope he doesn't get dragged down with my name. But yeah, he was there with me, and he was my squad leader. He's doing important stuff for Ukraine right now, so don't bother him. He actually does not want to get involved in anything I'm doing right now. So just let the guy move on from his experiences with me. He's actually somebody that is worthy of high level of praise. I'm not seeking it here. There's another guy named Nick who came across as a bit unhinged. A guy named Freddie, a Cuban who had sought refuge in Ukraine in the 90s, who had never done a lick of military service. And I was a fire team leader, and he was um, not the gunner, but like the assistant gunner, I think. And then Nick was the machine gunner, and I was a fire team leader. Trying to recall who else. Yeah, Frenchie. Frenchie was in the squad. Frenchie, Andres Galozzi. He was killed later on. He ended up dying. And there were probably a few others. So I went on. I did roughly 30 drone operations for them. I marked off Russian positions. We got a good understanding of what was on the other side of the Severodonetsk River, where we were at that time. Probably information that the Ukrainians already knew. But at that stage, things were still really rough, and this was July 2022. And we didn't have um, functioning radios for our OPs. And they were making me doing OP duties, which my contract says drone operator. Why are you wasting me on an OP, the furthest away from the enemy with a river between us when I can simply just fly a drone and look at them? So it built a large degree of resentment and this, a bit of rough intercultural communication between us, our superiors, like first line supervisors, and the Ukrainians. Everything's kind of through a middleman, and there was a lot of tension, and it just seemed that the Ukrainians, which I was wrong at the time, just put us there in this location because it was unimportant. Um, Towards the end, me and Jan exchanged some unfortunate words with each other, in which I apologized to him and we hugged and we made up. But I resigned from 1st Battalion IDLU on good terms. Now, on, moving on. So I resign and I'm in a hotel in Harki and my phone starts blowing up. Finally, I have time to look at it. And what did I do? I get messages from a Russian guy I met in Thailand who basically had doxed my information to Ryvar, and he got me at the perfect time. I had been was enjoying a bottle of wine or a bottle of two or three, who knows, on my off time, getting ready to head back to Western Europe to go about my life and sort some other issues out. Here we are as this Russian taunting me with these castration videos, and what can I say? I responded, and you can just look it up, the whole Benjamin Velcro saga rather, and which I apologize for, but that, guys getting doxxed and saying stupid stuff happens. There was a guy not that long ago that got doxxed by Russians, and they pretended to be the president's office of Ukraine, Poroshenko, I think is, the previous one, and how they didn't like Zelensky, and he got caught talking to the Russians, pretending to be someone else. And in my case, the guy that I was talking to, I had met in real life. I had no idea that he had the intentions of going to a Russian military blog and blasting me off. So, I responded with something kind of unfortunate, which wasn't true. It wasn't even near POWs. But it is ironic now that I'm in the New York Times alleging that Chosen Company did war crimes. When myself, when I was drunk, yelling at a troll on voice notes, said something unfortunate about an incident that never even happened or could have happened. It was just an imaginative event of a recon team that we captured. How, where would we have captured them? We were at the widest point of the river. There was no crossings of the river of that time. It was a very boring place, other than the artillery that came and took out some of the Brazilians that were in Charlie Company or Alpha Company, and the occasional, you know, we did have some artillery lands right on top of our living quarters, and saw just light artillery with them. But I saw way more artillery with Chosen Company. So that summarizes my combat experiences and what happened with me in Ukraine. Uh, I support the independence and sovereignty of Ukraine. I'm not a Russian shill by any means. I am portraying myself as a guy who just, in the end, got mixed up with the wrong people, and that was Chosen Company. And really, the only thing I ever wanted from them was to just leave me alone and, and then apologize. So now, yeah, there's my side of the story. Chosen Company is involved in systemic war crimes. Chosen Company had an article of a chemical weapon, or many, um, some sort of gas grenades that were meant for offensive purposes against an enemy. It wasn't thermite or anything like that. What it was, people are saying it was sarin, but I can't confirm that. And that's what I have to say. I didn't want to become a whistleblower. I didn't want to I didn't come to Ukraine to be some sort of social media star. I spent the hardest times of my life in those 55 days at the zero line, not touching social media, not being a TikTok star, not doing any of that stuff. So I worked in silence, and here we are today. So where's everything going? We're gonna deal with this New York Times stuff. We're gonna talk about politics, and we're gonna come up, and then we're going to do something very interesting. I'm going to evolve this YouTube channel, so bear with me. I'm just getting this out there because the news has already started talking about it, and there's going to be more news to follow. So you have this as a reference point of why I'm involved in this. Really, I want to create adventure travel content at this point. But here we go. Thank you for listening. If you want to know more about this crazy, exciting adventure, or we're going to escape to a place that traditionally people escape to from war, but we're going to take the long route. We're going to make it a little bit historical. And we have a guest star with us. I have drones. We're going to put all the videography together. We're going to have a really fucking interesting ride on this story. We're going to see where this all goes. Or maybe everything just gets spun out of control. We'll work on the production quality, put subtitles in and everything, but I'm just getting this out here right now so people can understand who I am. And at the end of the day, go back in my career, find a coach that says I wasn't uncoachable. Find me an NCO while I was in the Army that said I wasn't a hardworking soldier, and this is in the US Army. Find me Ukrainians that I work with that have something bad to say about me, and you will fall short. Like, follow, and subscribe to see where this all goes. Thanks.